when I was reading through the Enneagram stuff, a lot of it very much resonated with me, but I went, I'm not introverted. That doesn't, that's not me. That's not me, because I love people. I get my energy from people.
And it's more of like, and that's what one of the flaws of the Enneagram, right? Was it definitely all of the content, all of the resources that it had were like, you need to be out and about more with people that you love and care for, and you're like, I already do that. Like, I like people. I'm an extrovert. And so that was one of the few things that were like, oh, okay, this is where it might be a little short-sighted.
Yeah. And it's not that it was wrong.
Yep.
It was more focused on the people that are introverted. Yep. And it didn't have as much information for those who have those personality quirks that are extroverted. And so, as much as I really enjoyed learning about myself, I felt like, again, it wasn't exactly me, because it didn't explain why I was extroverted. Now,
welcome back to the Marketing as Missions podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jeff.
And I'm Mandy. I thought you were going to say something.
Nope.
And today we are going to be talking about personality.
I love this topic.
It's one of Jeff's and mine favorite topics, mainly because Jeff is a personality nerd and loves to do personality tests, and basically makes me do all of the personality tests that he can find.
When Facebook had its personality test era about like what Disney character is your personality or what Harry Potter person is your personality, like we literally took, I think, every single one.
Yeah.
And then realized that they were all like hoaxes and fakes, and I got really upset because I really like this stuff.
So today we're going to go through a couple legit personality tests that we have done. We're going to explain kind of who we are, how we work together, and then how to interact with people who may not mesh well with your personality, and how to kind of work through those either in ministry or in a workplace.
Because essentially working together is important, and the culture in which your team works together is incredibly important in today's workplace atmosphere and also your ministry atmosphere. And so I love personality.
It can also be important in our marriage.
Well, yeah, that too. Probably most important in your relationships. Probably. But I love personality because I love Psalm 139. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. Right? And there's a bunch of other beautiful truths in that passage. But God has created us fearfully and wonderfully made to be so different, not just in looks, not just in our family of origin, but in our own unique personality sets. And even if you meet somebody with your same Myers-Briggs letters or your same Enneagram number, you're still so different. And I love that. There's so much coolness to me about that. And it leads to a ton of difficulty. It leads to a ton of not so nice things that people end up saying. But it's a beautiful thing that we are all human. And God has chosen to create us all so beautifully and wonderfully different, so that we, as image bearers of God, can continue to show Him glory and show the world that He truly is God. Like, there's so much depth there for me theologically. I nerd out about that. That's why I love it so much.
The thing I really like about the personality test that we have done and kind of figuring out what we are is it really helps me figure out, oh, that's why I like doing this or that. It's because it's part of who I am. It's part of how God made me. And having similarities with people, like, oh, we're the same Enneagram number, it's one of those things where it's like we can connect on a certain level because we both enjoy things that are just because it's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, well, I like sharks because they're cool. I should have said sea turtles because
I was going to say, you don't really care for sharks.
I love sea turtles. I think they're really cool. I think they're cute, and I love sea turtles, and there are probably other people that love sea turtles, but there's other people that like sharks.
I like sharks.
He does like sharks. And so it's like
Shark Week every summer.
And I say no thanks, because then that makes me not want to go to the ocean, and I love the ocean. But that's not a personality. That's a like and a dislike.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because I like sea turtles and because you like sharks, that doesn't make your personality doesn't make you like those.
Correct.
It's just things that we like.
Yep.
And we can make those choices. Our personality is how God has wired us, how God has made us, and how we can then use those personality traits to help better our life, and how to use our strengths and work on our weaknesses. Because the other thing is, it does show us where we have some weaknesses, and we all have weaknesses. And so when we realize what those are, it helps us as we're working through different personality traits in our marriage, in our office, in our ministry settings. We can then figure out, how can I interact with this person and not want to rip their heads off?
Yeah.
The little things in life.
Maybe a little bit important. I mean, first degree murder is a kind of important thing.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So we wanted to cover real quick, if you've never heard about personality types, which I'm pretty sure you have, right? There are three, at least some of them. There are three main ones that I truly enjoy reading about, learning about. None of them are perfect. Some of them have histories that some people like or dislike. Doesn't mean that they're not a quality tool to use to find out how God has wired you, right?
Yep.
And so I think those top three for me are obviously the OG, the Myers-Briggs. I'm an ENFJ, and I've lost my touch on what all of those mean. But
we just looked them up.
And it still didn't really help me a ton.
You're extroverted. Intuitive.
Okay.
Feeling, judging.
Ooh, I do judge a lot, but that's not what it means. No, judging, if I remember correctly, and counseling profs, if you're watching this, correct me below, but the judging part is, I'm more geared to go ahead and make decisions. Like, I have a quick judge of this or that, and then I'm able to pick really quick. Or not really quick, but easier than most. So I'm definitely extroverted. The weird thing is the intuition. I've always felt that I've had that quote unquote like gut instinct a lot, and Mandy sometimes doesn't understand it because she doesn't have that necessarily as part of her natural personality, right? And she'll be like, "What are you thinking?" I'm like, "I don't know what I'm thinking, but this is what I'm feeling. Like my gut says," and she's like, how does that even work?
Yeah.
And so you are ESFJ?
ESFJ. So extroverted sensing.
Oh.
ESF, feeling, judging.
I will refrain from calling you sensitive.
Well, you did say that I had a disease at one point, so.
We won't get into that. This is why personality might be important in your marriage.
Yes. I am one of those people that I can be watching, excuse me, I can be watching a TV show that's, I don't know, think NCIS, right? And they're going through this whole thing and someone gets hurt. Like, I feel that hurt. Not physically, but emotionally. I just get very attached to the things that I watch on TV, which is why I have, personally decided I don't watch really intense movies and I don't watch any scary movies because I get too into the movies and then I end up having like nightmares and things about them. So I just don't do that. I stick with comedies. I stick with like
Disney.
Well, not necessarily happy movies because I watch dramas, but nothing that's like super intense or scary, just because that's of who I am as a person. I've chosen to stay away from that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But looking through, I did the Myers-Briggs when I was in college.
Yep, same.
And that was the first time I'd really heard of Myers-Briggs. And I thought it was very fascinating when we did it.
I have a question.
Okay.
As somebody who is higher on the sensing and the feeling, how did you feel when you sat down beside somebody who was working through the results with you, and it felt like they were hitting everything about who you were? Like, in that moment, how did you feel exposed? Did you feel found out? Did you go, oh, this is just kind of cool? Or did you go, how dare you know me so well by just looking at a sheet of paper?
Well, it was interesting because no one went through it with me.
That's a shame.
I read through the stuff at the end. Like, there wasn't anyone going through it with me. But it was weird, like, reading through it going, why am I on this paper? Like, why? How do they know me?
Right.
But it is very interesting. And I also had the same feeling when we did some of the other tests. The second test that we did is a more recent test, but it's called the Enneagram.
The Enneagram.
And when we did the Enneagram,
you were called out.
I was very much. So those who don't know me very well, I love math, like very, very much. But I'm also a very creative person. I enjoy all types of art, in the sense of, like, I like making art. I like experiencing the fine arts in plays and operas and concerts and things like that. So I'm kind of a mix, and most people would not assume that those go together. And there were many times where I felt like I was just an outcast because I didn't feel like I went together. However, on the Enneagram, I am a 4-wing 5, which means that I am a very creative person with a love of structure and basically a math, brain. So the Enneagram explained me to the point where I went, I get it now. Now I understand how I can be a person, because everyone else was like, that doesn't make sense. Why do you like those?
Yep.
So.
Including me.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, how can you be so smart? And be so, like, off the deep end creatively. Not off the deep end, but, like, you were very well cultured, and not just because you thought you needed it or somebody pushed you into it, you generally found it incredibly fascinating. And I was like, oh, like, can you pick one? I just didn't understand. And so it was really cool to watch you go through that and read those things and go, oh, that's how they can work together. And it's like, all things work together for good. Spiritual principles and personality? What? And it was funny because when I took the Enneagram, more than the Myers-Briggs, again, like your experience, in college I had the Myers-Briggs, and I was like, wow, yeah, this is very in-depth, this is me, this is kind of creepy, kind of crazy. And then I took the Enneagram a little bit later on in life when it started getting popular, and I was like, oh, that explains a lot about me. I felt that the Enneagram was more of a... Both are personality tests, right? And they obviously have incredibly different structural and research differences in how they get their information. But the Enneagram for both of us helped put into place more of a social structure of not just who we are, but how we can mix the strengths that we have together with the wings and the different aspects of that. So I think it helped us more culturally and socially go, oh, not only is this who we are from a personality standpoint, but this is how we can utilize it.
Yeah, and almost how we view this might sound weird, but how we view our lives.
Yeah.
Because like I am a 4, so I view things through a creative viewpoint, but then I have my wing 5 where I like things being efficient. I like things being organized. I like things, in a simple order. And so that's how I set my life up.
Yeah.
It's not, I have a hard time saying view my life because everyone goes, well, you need to have it through a biblical perspective. And it's like, yes. As long as you are a Christian and you believe that Jesus Christ is your Savior and you read your Bible and try to strive to live like Jesus, you're going to have a biblical viewpoint. This is more of like how I live out my life as a Christ follower and how I choose to organize my life. Maybe that's a better way of saying it.
Or just naturally how you see the world around you.
Yeah.
And obviously God can redeem some of the weaknesses in that, but we see the world very differently.
Yes, and what is your Enneagram? Because you have yet to say that.
I know, I kind of avoided it. I am an 8 wing 7. So the 8 is the challenger. And is very much the almost strong. One of the bad parts about it is if it's overused, it can be domineering, which is not a great thing. And then the 7 is kind of like your life of the party, right? It's more of the spontaneous, let's just go have fun, let's do something wild and crazy, more of a higher risk take philosophy. And I never wanted that to be me. And then I realized the Myers-Briggs hinted at it for me, and it kind of scared me. And then like the Enneagram's like, no, this is definitely who I am. So I've kind of tried to just accept that a little bit more as I've gotten older. And I'm not doing like stupid risk-taking stuff. Like I'm not jumping out of airplanes without parachutes or stuff like that. But I'm more of like, you know what? It's an overused saying, but as long as it glorifies God and it's going to be for His glory and our good, YOLO. You seriously, you do only live once. So you know what? If you have an opportunity, why not take it? And which is hilarious because when I have that, Mandy's like structured, perfect, precision-based mind is just like, red flag alert all over the place.
Okay, you saying that, this is a sidetrack, reminds me, we've gotten our kids into watching PB&J Otter, which is a like 90s
Watch bird alert.
Watch bird alert. Anyway, so that was a little snippet from a 90s cartoon.
There you go. Now I can put in the thumbnail nostalgia.
Oh, that was great. So an interesting thing, as we were researching Enneagram stuff and going through that, I had realized that both 4s and 5s tend to be introverted. And as you heard from previously in my Myers-Briggs, I am extroverted. When I was reading through the Enneagram stuff, a lot of it very much resonated with me, but I went, I'm not introverted. That doesn't, that's not me. That's not me because I love people. I get my energy from people.
And it's more of like, and that's what one of the flaws of the Enneagram, right? Was it definitely all of the content, all of the resources that it had were like, you need to be out and about more with people that you love and care for. And you're like, oh, I already do that. Like, I like people. I'm an extrovert. And so that was one of the few things that were like, oh, okay, this is where it might be a little short-sighted.
Yeah. And it's not that it was wrong.
Yep.
It was more focused on the people that are introverted.
Yeah.
And it didn't have as much information for those who have those personality quirks that are extroverted.
Mm-hmm.
And so as much as I really enjoyed learning about myself, I felt like, again, it wasn't exactly me because it didn't explain why I was extroverted. Now, again,
as one of our kids says, only you can be you and no other will do.
Exactly.
So none of it's going to be perfect, but the opportunities that we've had to read about how we are,
yes,
has been amazing. When I read the word challenger, I knew that I had been gifted with a bold personality. I knew that I didn't mind confrontation,
which I hate.
I knew that I speak my mind, whether I probably should or should not occasionally. And then I read the word challenger, and I read through on the Enneagram 8 what that meant, and I was like, oh, big time grew, light bulb alert. It was like, I not exist, you know what I mean? To challenge what's around me and if it's actually the right way to go about things. Now, that can get me into a heap load of trouble in a lot of different areas because there is a not so right way to do those things, and there is a tactful, relational, caring way to do those things, and I've had to learn the hard way on some of those. But the fact of the matter is I also really like efficiency.
Which is where we are very
where we
compatible.
Mesh well.
Because it is very interesting in all of the positions that we have had where we have been in a role together.
Yep.
We are able to look at things in a way and go, that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z.
Boop, 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 boop.
But this could work if we did A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would make it better because it's more efficient and it works better. And, this has a better flow and blah, 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 blah. And people go, how do you think through that? How do you know that? And we're like, I don't know.
We just do. And we poke holes in each other's boats all the time.
I love poking holes in your boats.
Because I'll be like, I've got this grand idea. And you're like, 5 outlined bullet point of how we're going to do it. Go. And I'm like, oh, I just want to go do this.
You're like
my
I want to reach for the stars. How are we going to do it? Where's the rocket ship? Do we have any gas? Where's the money to build it?
She's like, you don't even have a building to build it in.
And you're like, okay.
I'm like, that's where my wing 7 is like, life of the party, let's go, let's just go do something. And you're like,
my 5 is like, give me statistics.
You're like sadness and inside out. And like, no, I don't want to. Okay, so pause. This is actually going to take us down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Oh boy.
Because I wanted to share a funny story about our personalities and how they existed. And I think the time for me that it's set in stone how emotionally driven you were in how you felt about things is when we went and saw the movie Inside Out in theaters. Y'all, I loved it. Like, my counseling psychology mind was like, yeah, the best joke in that whole movie is when the little things are running around. It's like, my neurons are firing. My neurons are firing. I was dying laughing because it was just a funny joke from a psychology mindset.
Yep.
And I walked out of there like excited
you were, like,
and filled
beaming,
up
like,
and beaming.
This is the best. And
This
I
was
walked
awesome.
out going, I don't know how to feel. I was laughing. I was crying. I was sad.
She was paralyzed.
It was the worst. I mean, I love the movie. Don't get me wrong, but it was the worst feeling after watching it the first time because, like, bing bong. Like, I cried.
You cried so much, but you laughed the hardest of anybody in the theater at the same time.
It's
like,
true.
Because you felt like that on such a deep level
It's my
on
sensing
every emotion. Like, I'd kind of known, and you had told me, and we'd have lived a little bit together from that, but that was the moment that it was like concrete in my mind where I'm like,
ooh, she's different.
this is her. And you left that movie theater exhausted.
Yep.
Because you literally felt at a deeper level than anybody else every single emotion that was present, and then the emotions happened to be the main characters of the movie. And that for you was just like, boom, you shut down the rest of the day. It was crazy.
Yeah. The other movie that I had a really hard time processing was Encanto. I bawled in that movie probably the first 6 times that I watched it. And you would think after the, 4th or 5th time that I wouldn't cry. No, I was still bawling. I
was still trying to learn all the names in the family.
You still don't know them all.
I still don't know them all. Oh, so that was our sidetrack funny story about our personality differences without getting too deep into the weeds about how they've caused rifts in our relationship.
So we've gone through 2 of the personality tests.
Third one is my least favorite.
But it's the one that you've most recently done and was the most recent to learn about?
Well, I think so it's the DISC profile.
Right. I had never heard of it until you did it at Ashley Lace.
I had heard about it before and I knew that it was similar, but it was also more business-minded, right? And so I took the DISC when I started working for Ashley Lace Real Estate, and I was like, so much like the Myers-Briggs is kind of more of that heavy-duty research-oriented, this is who you are. This is what you're most likely to choose in a given situation. And the Enneagram is more of this is how your life plays out when you think this way naturally. The DISC is more of this is how you respond 9 times out of 10 naturally when you're faced with certain things, whether that's opposition, reward systems, and a bunch of other things like personality conflicts and stuff like that. And so there's the D, the I, the S, and the C. D is dominant, I is something, S is something, and C means detail-oriented. Leanne Day is probably ready to strangle me at this point, but it was one of those things.
Do you need me to Google it?
I might need to Google it. The link in the profile below if you're really curious about the DISC.
We are experts on this.
Yeah, this is why we started.
If you're not watching, I was shaking my head in a negative way when I said that.
I think for the last couple episodes, we just need to have a scrolling, kind of like the Pat McAfee show. This series is a bunch of stooges just talking about life, and we're just here to share our stories, right?
We are not experts. We are just talking about what we have experienced. We are not experts. We are just talking about what we have experienced.
Exactly, but there's also a lot of good in that.
Yes,
and we're still doing it, so we think it's still viable.
Well, you're still watching, so
exactly.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
But with the DISC.
With the DISC.
What are you?
I am a DI.
Okay.
Which is semi-rare because most of the time I is more emotive, right? You display and showcase your emotions. A lot of people are ISC. They're emotive. S is more of you're caring, comforting, oh, come here, it's okay. You're able to hide or mask a lot of your true emotions because you care about moving forward. And then C is very much attention to detail, how organized and precise things have to be. And I was not so strong in that category.
Shocker.
Well, I was stronger than my boss thought, which was always a fun conversation. I like systems and processes, but where I like systems and processes, I like figuring out where they're wrong. Going back to the Enneagram, the Challenger.
Setting up the systems and processes. You don't like doing the systems and processes.
I would rather fix the system and processes because I can see a more efficient way of doing it. Let me get my hands dirty. Let me fix it. Set it up for you. But please, just selfishly speaking, don't ask me to do that after I've fixed it. I've already made it complete. I've already fixed it. Now you go ahead and just work it because that's just how my personality is. Is that an excuse for me to not work or do other things? No, not at all. But naturally speaking, I am more of like, ooh, let me see a problem, I fix a problem, and then that problem is now fixed for the next person. I'm bored now. What's next?
Now, I think I took the disc because you made me, but I don't remember exactly what I was.
You're an ISC for the most part. I don't know where you're at on that, but your C is pretty high. So Mandy and I both like systems and details, but we like them at different levels. Mm-hmm. Mandy, with her math brain, is incredibly precise.
Yes.
If something in a baking recipe says a quarter of a teaspoon, and she has more than 3 grains of salt that is higher than a quarter of a teaspoon, she, in her heart of hearts, wants to make sure that it's perfect. And I'm like, a quarter of a teaspoon kind of looks like this. Boop. Just throw it in. I like details and systems in the sense of it can run and create efficiency, but I don't enjoy performing the tasks that create the efficiency.
We'll
you love that.
Well, we'll go with the baking thing.
Okay.
I love baking because it has a recipe that you follow. If you follow it correctly, you will get something that will turn out good. Now, obviously, sometimes when you're baking some things like with yeast and other things, there are other things that can affect it. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, if you're baking a cake, if you follow the directions, you get a cake.
Yep.
Jeffrey would much rather cook, create his own thing, figure out his own thing, and make a meal, but he doesn't have to follow a specific recipe. It might have ingredients, but he can do whatever he wants with them.
Including usually whatever I'm drinking at the time.
Yeah, Pepsi,
Coke, Sprite.
Yeah,
a little lemon lime flavor wouldn't do any harm.
Yeah. So that's where you like having a base. This is what I'm going to make. These are the ingredients that I have, but let me do what I want with them.
Like me on Chopped, I would love that. Like on the TV show Chopped.
Right.
I would, I'd be, like, I don't have the culinary knowledge to make different, like, specialty flavors work together like the cooks do. But that, like, giving me a surprise basket of ingredients and say, make a meal out of this. I'd be like, ooh, that sounds fun. I want to do that.
And I would be better on, like,
Crime Scene Kitchen?
Yes, that's where I was going towards. All I could think of was Cutthroat Kitchen, and I was like, not quite.
Well, your competitiveness would get you pretty far in Cutthroat Kitchen, though, too.
Probably. But Crime Scene Kitchen, where you have to guess what they made, but you have a recipe that you're going off of. Mm-hmm. Like, you know how to make these things. It's not like you're going in and not knowing how to make, a pie, or you don't know how to make a cake. Like, you already know how to do it.
Yep.
And that's what I would thrive off of, because I like having a system. I like going through them, which is why I was a great person to have in the finance office and have in the front office, because databases, that's my jam. I can do databases all day. That's why I'm the one that goes through all of the churches and puts them all in the database for you, because that's what I do. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I would much rather just be on the phone.
Yep.
And I'm going, all the power to you.
I'd rather, like, frozen cold call somebody than do 10 minutes of research to, like, cool call somebody. Like, and Mandy's like, nope, let me vet them for you. And it's made the process a lot easier. But I think, like, knowing that has taken some time. Mm-hmm. We've definitely had to grow in that. And I just think back at my time both on a ministry team and in a real estate office. Putting different personalities together is exhausting. And I think if I'm not careful, I could go off on a whole other podcast topic right now about creating a culture on your team. And I think that probably needs to be another podcast episode. But understanding the personalities on your team is the number one component to building a complete culture with whatever you're pursuing. building a complete culture on any team that you're working on, whether that's a marriage team with just you and your spouse, whether that's a work team, whether that's a ministry team with paid people and volunteers. Figuring out personalities and how they mesh together for good and working together is the number one component to building a world-class culture on any team that you're in.
Yeah. And when you figure out your personality, even in Enneagram and stuff, there are personality types that you won't get along with.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to mesh with everyone. And that's okay. But the thing that you have to be aware of is that just because you don't mesh with them doesn't mean that you shouldn't be nice or not accommodating, but you shouldn't just, be mean to them or just ignore them. You still have to work with them. Mm-hmm. And I think the hardest part for most people is, how do I work with someone? How do I interact with someone whose personality rubs me like a cheese grater?
Mm-hmm. And if I had the answer to that, we would be millionaires, and I would be speaking every day to different teams. I think the main thing that I've learned in that, though, is as much as you can be me and be a personality nerd and have a lot of core things figured out about other people that nobody else knows, right? I can go up to somebody and within a 10, 15-minute conversation, not have them pegged, but kind of understand who they are and how they work and how they operate. And that was so beneficial in an office setting because I had a bunch of different real estate agents come in and out, and all these real estate agents, and really honestly, even in ministry teams, all your different pastors, they all have personalities. And not just the personalities we're talking about. We're talking like egos. And everybody's got to be treated the way that they want to be treated, right? Sometimes recognition is a big thing. Sometimes a couple extra bucks here is a big thing. Learning those type of things is incredibly vital. But personality is just how you naturally see the world and how you could naturally respond. It isn't a silver bullet. Mm-hmm. It is not the right answer all the time because you have sin in the world. You have different situations that they don't necessarily change your personality. I'm a firm believer that personality, except in extreme traumatic situations, personality remains static for most of your life. Mm-hmm. But things can change in your life that allow you to focus on different aspects of your personality.
Right.
Mandy could have something happen, and instead of just being all about the systems and the fine details, she could all of a sudden really want to create something and have this moment of power where she's like, I actually want to take things into my own life and just do things my own way. And instead of enjoying creativity and instead of enjoying art, really put all of her effort into creating something like that. That's not something you've truly explored, but it's something within your personality concept that would make a ton of sense.
Right.
So working with those is vital, but everybody's got different things going on in their life.
Right. And I think the thing we have to remember is no matter what the situation is, you have to put patience at the forefront.
Put your patience pants on.
Put your patient pants on because going into this, you know that your personalities don't mesh very well. Mm-hmm. But when you're in a ministry or when you're in a workplace and you have to do something or a project or whatever with that person, you're going to have to know, okay, I'm going to have to put my patience pants on. I'm going to have to make sure that I'm truly listening to them and making sure that I'm not just trying to push my own thoughts and agendas. Because a lot of times having other personalities in situations like that is very beneficial because you might not see everything just through your point of view, and they might bring about something that really probably should, be considered. But a lot of times we don't even want to listen to them because of the personality difference.
Yep.
So it's really hard. It's really hard when you're dealing with someone whose personality just does not mesh well with yours. And sometimes it can be a personality that doesn't mesh well with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to make sure that when you're working with them, that you are making sure that whatever is getting done is going to be for the good of everyone
Mm-hmm.
and for God's glory in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a bad attitude going into it, or you're starting to have frustrations towards that person, that's not beneficial.
Yeah.
And that's not going to help you get to the end. Now, can it go both ways? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're not going to budge. And that's where you kind of have to...
That's where you go behind their back.
You got to be the bigger person sometimes.
Challenger.
I would have never guessed that.
No, I know, right? No, everything you're saying is so vital to remember, right? Because even the strongest of personalities, the strongest dominant personalities, it's always, at least it seems like in a business world, especially for an introvert, you're like, golly, the squeaky wheel always gets the grease. Like, it's whoever's the loudest, whoever's complaining the loudest, always gets what they want. And you just kind of feel slighted sometimes with that. And it's like, yeah, that unfortunately that kind of drama, that kind of unfairness does exist.
Mm-hmm.
But how can you set up systems and processes and structures to where you're creating a culture, you're building up a team that avoids that like the plague? Like, that's something that you don't hire into your team.
Right.
Maybe you have it now, and maybe it's time that you help them find something new.
Find where they best fit.
That's it.
And, sometimes you have a choice about who is in your team or who is with you in ministry, and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you just have to deal with what you have. And there are times we had to deal with what we were given.
That's my greatest regret, though, is not having conversations like that sooner with people that, not that I didn't mesh with, but that truly didn't have a skill set that was going to be fruitful in the long run with what we wanted to accomplish. I did a very poor job in our first ministry recruiting people that had skill sets that could complement mine.
Mm.
I recruited people that I liked, and I held on to people that were given to me for way too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have had those tough conversations of, this is where we're going. If you're not going in this direction with me, we need to find someplace better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not have the strength or the character in those days to, number one, have those conversations, but number two, handle those conversations with the grace that I needed to.
Right.
I'd have come across very harsh. It would have come across as, oh, the new guy's in and he's kicking me out. And that wouldn't have been the case. It would have been, we need to find something better for you because this is how God is leading this program.
Right.
So that's tough waters. And we're glossing over a lot of this, right?
Yes.
This kind of stuff, and I can't overemphasize this point enough, this kind of stuff takes years. With a Y. Years. Not days, not weeks, not months. Years. And if you have any sort of over 50% turnover on your team, it sucks to balance all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where again, going back to culture, your culture, how your systems and your structures enable your hiring so that you're hiring the right fit for your business. Whatever that is, that's where you as the owner of the company, you as the hiring manager, whatever that is, you as the pastor, you can bring in not the people that you want, but the people that you want to create the culture that you desire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be different for everybody. There's market research and everything else that you need to do with that. But it is so important that you remember that personality meshing is a long game.
Yep.
You can do a lot more than you think you can in 6 months of building a culture of this is who you want to bring in and how you want to do it, but then still actually enacting that plan and putting it into place is a true process that requires time. We're all human. None of us are perfect. And as soon as you think you've got somebody figured out, they're going to go off and do something you never thought they would ever do.
Isn't that the truth?
And so you're never going to have it figured out. It's never going to be perfect. But it is so vital that it needs to be still focused on every single day. And it almost sounds like discipleship, which I think we'll get into in our next episode of how to maybe disciple people that are seemingly unlovable that are right in front of you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just talking about homeless people.
I feel like in our life, God has put a lot of people in our personal path of people that are on the outskirts of ministry.
That's a good way to put it. They're not outcasts, but they're on the outskirts.
Yeah. Most people would see them and not really pay much attention to them. But those were the ones where we had the most impact on.
Those are the ones I want on my team.
Yeah.
Still to this day, I don't care what team it is, like, I want the one who was overlooked in 4 job interviews for something stupid or something silly. I want that person. Sure, the person with the amount of talent that is through the roof is going to be fantastic. But when you have a talented person, there's some ego to stroke there. There's some things to figure out. And it's like a wide receiver in the NFL. If you can't keep the diva happy, the diva could be gone real quick. Business owners, you know what I'm talking about. And there's a whole bunch of different hiring practices out there. We're not going to get into that. But personality is a huge part of that.
Yep.
If you are not doing some sort of personality test, I don't care if it's the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, or the DISC, or whatever else is out there that is semi-scientifically structured, do something in your hiring. Churches, this is so important for you. If you're a growing church and your pastor needs help and you're looking to bring in a music guy or a youth guy or kind of an all-around good guy to help out.
That you're doing these tests so that you're not bringing in someone who's going to grate at the pastor that you have or work against the team that is already established. Make sure that you're bringing someone in who meshes well, who works well with the people that are there. And your team is going to see a big difference when you make sure that that person is a good fit, not just financially, but a good fit personally.
And you cannot find that good fit on a piece of paper.
No. You can't even find that fit with a face-to-face interview because everyone can look good for an hour.
So I like what we used to do at ALRE. We used to intentionally put manageable stumbling blocks in the way in the hiring process to see how that they would react to something unexpected that they didn't know that we had planned. And then we kind of move forward based off of that. And that sets up our next line of questioning in the next interview. And there's a bunch of different research on that and different things that I forget right now. But I'll look it up and have it in the show notes below. Because remember, I'm a nerd at this, but I'm not an expert.
It's true.
One of these days, maybe I'll do something.
Mr. Generalist.
Expert. I am a generalist. I am not a specialist, and the word specialist scares me. Unless I'm actually going to see one because I have a specialized problem, which I have a lot of.
Yeah.
Although in general, sometimes I am a problem. So
that's a little bit about personalities.
Personalities, ministry, business setting. That went a lot more business than I thought, but I think that's also just my wheelhouse and what it's been the last 3.5 years of my life. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. This one was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. And I have a feeling there are some other ways that we could dive deeper into this. So if you guys really enjoyed this and you want a deeper dive,
we could definitely do a deep dive on any of the three. Yep.
Comment down below. We value your comments. We don't get very many, so when you comment, we love it, and we're able to kind of implement those into our future podcasts.